What is up? It's Dave. It's Duncan from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from London-based Middle Eastern progressive doom band Lowen. The band London-based, yeah.
Couldn't have been more wrong if I tried.
The band's new album, Do Not Go to War with the Demons of Mazandaran.
You spent so much time learning Danish.
I did for that last
week
review.
For the last review that you didn't even bother with this, did you?
Mazandaran. I don't know.
I would say Mazandaran, but that's because we're Scottish, and as a result of that, we enunciate in a particular way that makes everything sound hard as fuck.
Yeah. Well, that album is going to be out on October 4th on Church Road Records.
Oh, hello, Church Road. What's that? Yes, I will take your call.
So, Lowen, comprised of Nina on vocals, Daf, Santur and more, as well as Shem on guitar alongside Cal on drums, and also a bassist when playing live.
I can't help it. What's happening, Shem? It's a Glasgow joke, which no one will get except Glasgow.
The band mainly focuses on the displaced identity of vocalist and multi-instrumentalist Nina, who was born into exile from Iran in the UK. In Iran, playing metal is illegal, and women singing unaccompanied risk execution. The ancient world, its art and languages form a backdrop for an exploration of the pain and longing of the despotically dispossessed in her mournful wails and use of traditional tahrir, so many words I can't pronounce here, tahrir vocals unique to Iran.
I mean, at this stage now, like, you might as well just cough when you say those hard words. Like, feign a wee cough, look away, pretend the microphone cut it, and just mouth it. So like you're like, do a wee glitch effect on there, and then just keep it in.
Their debut album, A Crypt in the Stars, was released in 2018, and then in 2021 they released a live and improvised acoustic EP entitled Unceasing Lamentations, which was sung in Sumerian and Akkadian.
Jesus fucking Christ.
One of the many fables of the... Oh, here we go.
Did you proofread this before you started? No.
No. Clearly not enough.
Not. Yeah.
I'm not even going to pronounce that. The Persian Book of Kings concerns the folly of rulers who jealously extend their empires despite the warnings of their own people. It's during this tale that he is warned not to go to war with the demons of Mazandaran. This chapter of the book forms the concept of the album. The album was recorded with producer Lewis Johns.
Explains this is like the term squeaky clean. There is a kind of almost like, you know, there is a you could eat your dinner off this kind of cleanness, which is it's the Johns effect, isn't it? Really, let's be honest with you.
So Lewis Johns and also another guy called Kel Pinchin as well was involved. The album's going to be released, as I said, on October 4th on Church Road in the UK and Lay Bear Recordings in the EU.
Could not care less about the EU. We voted to come out. I joke about that. I voted to stay in. Right, we're Scottish. 60% of us, 60+% of us voted to stay in. So that was a wee joke. It's a wee joke. Right, it's getting warm in here, Dave. It's getting a wee bit warm in here.
So, 6 tracks, about 37 minutes in length. So, what do we make of the new Lowen album? Duncan, what do you think of this one?
The descriptive word I would use here, Dave, is substantial. Right. It's a substantial release. When I say substantial, you may be going, that is that a positive word? Is that a negative word? And what I'm going to say is I'm leaving it up to you. To me, what it meant was that, like, every single song here is like there's no space not for an idea not to be used, which is a double negative. Like I kind of feel like every song kind of felt like everyone's at a table and they're like shouting out things, and at no point did anyone say no. And that works to its benefit. At times for me, it works slightly against it. But I feel like the one thing you will not get out of listening from a double negative again. What am I doing here?
This review is just
what's happening here? It's
brain fucked, man.
I'm just gonna start coughing over my review. The thing that I think you will get from this is a plethora of ideas. Right? I don't think the band are short on ideas, concepts, styles, or musical ability. I think everything sounds grand, and I think Loose Johns, to an extent, is probably why that is the case. But I think the band bring a level of that as well. I think they're bold with vision. So the guitar parts, when they're not like just doing like cool fucking chuggy brutalness, those sections where you get this kind of Middle Eastern inspired solos or melodies that sit really well underneath the vocals. Once again, a difficult thing to do when you have a vocalist who has such a powerful range and a commanding presence recorded. You can sometimes be distracted away from what the rest of the band are doing. And that's never the case here. And I think that kind of flurry of what they do musically is really intoxicating. And as a result, like huge swaths of this album, I am locked in. Like I'm just like following the groove, following the progression. Those progressive waves that they do are really, really cool. They add a lot of atmosphere, vibe, and colour. I'm going to get my very small negatives out the way, and then I'm going to come back to the positives. I do feel like they have a tendency to walk the songs a little long. And there's maybe one or two ideas where I'm listening to it and I'm like that. It's fine, but it doesn't add anything to the song. So like an extra interlude on a track where conceptually it's an interesting bit of music, but it doesn't add anything to the track except length.
Yeah.
And as a result, for me, when I heard those moments, I was kind of like, that could have been really interesting somewhere else on maybe another song as a kind of lead riff or a chorus riff. There's no element here which doesn't sound great. It's just the combination of them kind of squashed into the songs they are. Like there is no song here that runs really short, apart from The Seeds That Dreamed of Its Own Creation, which is single length. Everything else here is well over the 5-minute mark, and comfortably so. The closing song is close to 9 minutes in length. So like they want to explore ideas, they want to explore concepts. I kind of felt at times like an external party, maybe a producer, actually being a little bit more forceful and saying compositionally, what does this actually add? Might have changed it. Anyway, that's literally my only negatives. Musically, very, very interesting. Vocally, incredible. Like I love the range on this chick here. I think she at times reminded me a little bit of the singer from Lacuna Coil, but with a kind of weirdly like a more interesting range, especially like I mentioned before, those kind of Middle Eastern lilts that you have to lean into are not easy at all. And I always remember back to there's a tiny little pinch of the Breed 77 in here that when I remember listening to them thinking you're the only guy that could probably do that over a band that sounds like this because of how you, like obviously how you grew up, your vocal style and the culture and heritage that you have in your music. I will say this, the band are not scared to get a wee bit heavy, and which I kind of loved because like you have a powerful melodic vocalist, you have a guitarist who can clearly go proggy if he wants, and you're surrounded by other musicians that are just really good at what they do. I think the tendency would to be lean more into that, and you could get long form, really proggy. You can almost get lost in the progginess of it. The one thing they do, and they do it on almost every track, is they remember that ultimately people have to headbang, so they'll find a way of getting back to like a breakdown or a groove riff. And when they do that, those bits sound so much bigger because of everything that's come either side of them, and they utilize it really well. To me, like when I was listening to Corruption on Earth, which is the opening track, I remember kind of following it around, and I was like, this is really, really cool. It's quite a long opening track. I wonder what they're going to do. And then they break into a little kind of Gojira-esque groove that kicked in. When that landed, I was just like, And I was also driving, so 10 and 2. So it was kind of more a kiss the hand sort of thing like that. There's at least one song here that I would... Track number 2, which is in a language I can't pronounce, is a great example of what the band can do when they're free of their reins. And that's the one where you get the really... like a strong sense of the culture and the vocals. There's a lot of melody here, but the melody is almost like a prayer call. It doesn't, but it's not memorable melody. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's so infectious to listen to.
Yeah.
The back half of the album, so once you come at the seeds that dreamed of its own creation, that's where I think things get a little bit muddied for me in terms of composition. But I was thinking about this more and more. I was trying to think of bands that come from or are inspired musically from this part of the world that sound like Lowen, and I really struggle to think of anything out with comparisons vocally, or bands like Nile, for example, who will throw a Middle Eastern sort of guitar hook in.
Yeah.
But it's never collectively around the whole sound of the band.
Yeah.
So this to me stands out because it sounds so very different from everything else.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think in some respects, because I don't have a grounding or context, some of those moments where it maybe does spiral off, I don't have a grounding for them to link them back. So yeah, I admire the craft. I admire the production. I think vocally this is absolutely captivating. To me, I feel there are moments where it lost me a little bit in terms of the song length and the composition overall. But that, one, might be me, and two, who am I to judge the band? Like, I'll obviously give you my opinion, but I mean, they're working with like industry professionals and a great record label who clearly have confidence in what they're doing. So just take me as a dissenting voice. It's really interesting, though. It's really, really, really interesting, and the musicality and songmanship is of a very, very, very high level.
Yeah.
Across every, like, it's not a case of, well, they've got a great vocalist, music underneath, and all that. Like, across the board, everything is written with precision.
Yeah.
It just, the whole package doesn't necessarily hang together for me like other things I've heard this year. How about you, Dave?
Interesting.
Big Davey Lowen.
So
It's your new nickname.
Okay.
Something shame.
So funnily enough, I have a lot of positive.
I disagree with you 100%, Duncan. Well, it's in vinyl. I've been spinning all week.
I have a lot of positive things to say about this, but also a couple of things that I'm a little bit on the fence about.
Right. See if you inverse what I've said. All the stuff where it goes like that's my good stuff, and see the stuff that's a wee bit conventional for Dave. So,
well, I obviously knew nothing about the band, so I did a little spin of their previous album, A Crypt in the Stars. Was that the first album? Can't remember. I checked out A Crypt in the Stars anyway, and after hearing that, I was like, okay, it's clear there are quite a few differences between that album and this new one.
Differences quantified. Differences as in maturity, heaviness.
Stylistically,
all right, cool.
That album leaned far heavier on the doom side of things.
All right, because you mentioned doom before, and I don't get a ton of doom in this at all.
No,
if I'm honest,
not at all. Well, no, I don't say not at all, but it's there, but it's not like it was in the previous album. That album had like big, long, droning chords, and it lingered, and it took its time. And the riffs were very much of that kind of like drony, kind of thick sound.
Which I think, like, if you were doing what she does vocally, that would sit really well over.
Yeah.
You know, like kind of those hanging chords and her being the driving force for all the melody.
Yeah.
Where in this one, this felt very prog in parts.
For sure. Like, this album is way more progressive in style overall. There's a kind of doomy undertone to it, but it's not as kind of concentrated on this release. The guitar work on this is much more metallic. There's much more precision to it. And on this, unlike the kind of the doomier debut, that the riffs are switching up much more often on this album as well. Which then moves you on to the second big change, the production. Like, my God, the difference in production is like...
You hire Lewis Johns like on your production, even if he's not the full like producer of it. You hire that guy. You are like, name a bad album. Like, go for it.
I know.
Find me one. I'll wait.
The first album was very like kind of murky doom. It had that like character to it. This does not. This, like, you could eat your dinner off this. This is like, has the Lewis Johns kind of rub all over it. It's crisp and it's fresh. And it makes the band sound much more vibrant. It adds real like punch to these more like progressive leanings that they've got on this album. And like if you are a fan of like anything Lewis has done, like, you know, the new Rolo Tomasi or Ithaca or People Slicer or Employed to Serve, like this album has the same type of weight as those albums. But musically, as I mentioned, this is quite a shift from what they've done in the past. And as I said, there's a lot to like here, a lot of positive things. It is much heavier. It's got more kind of layers to it, a bit more kind of twisty. You can hear the intricacies of the songwriting have become more pronounced on this. The level of kind of detail has definitely increased on this one. But what I think they've done more importantly on this release is give it a stamp of personality. And yes, this is very groove laden, it's very progressive and chunky, and it's got plenty of switch ups and, you know, tempo and rhythm and all that. Vocally, it's incredibly well delivered. But Lowen have managed to also weave in a kind of streak of originality using that Middle Eastern character. And like you said, it kind of separates them instantly. You can hear little influences of other bands throughout this, but those bands don't have that Middle Eastern infusion through their style or the lead work or in the vocals, which is clearly like a bigger focal point on this release. As I said, you've got tracks here that are sung in Farsi with Farsi and Sumerian lyrics. You've also got a track that contains a Neo-Babylonian ghost summoning incantation, plus little bits of additional instrumentation, like the use of...
Explain why my plates have been flying around my living room since I put on the old Siri, and then it was fucking shit's flying. Lights don't come on right. A presence right behind me. I don't know if you can see it, right, Steve? Yeah.
I also got a little bit of cello that they use on May Your Ghost Drink Pure Water.
A little bit of cello. Come on, Dave. Jesus Christ, man.
But even on that first track on Corruption of Earth, it builds perfectly, bringing in all the instrumentation kind of bit by bit. And early on, it has that tinge to the lead work that feels quite Middle Eastern. It's there right from the start. The notes they've used, the way they've layered it, even the rhythm as well is very kind of like offbeat. You've got some percussion as well, adding to the feel of the track. But you know, although it's got that kind of pinch of flavour throughout it, they don't go overboard with it either. You know, when they just kind of hold back and not kind of go too far. Or, you know, just like, you know, let the groove or riff kind of take the spotlight on the album. The first track also had a couple of moments where they dip their toe into something a little bit more extreme, where the guitars start to move into almost kind of like death metal territory, which I really liked. It's got a bit of that on track 2 as well, which I'm not going to try and pronounce. But funnily, you mentioned Nile. I got a little bit of that in some of the lead work, that kind of Middle Eastern flavour. And that, again, it rears its head on a number of occasions throughout the album. It never really goes full pelt on the extreme stuff. They just kind of touch on it. And at moments I was like, oh, I kind of wish they'd just went for it. Like, just, you know, fully committed to that. And just went really heavy. I think it probably would have added another kind of level change to the album, but they don't. They kind of just kind of hold it back a little bit. That's obviously a decision made by the band. Similarly, as much as I really like this kind of progressive approach to their sound, part of me does kind of miss that ominous doom side as well, though. And it's, as I said, it's kind of there to an extent, but it's more of a feeling than like a sound. I think there were opportunities here where they could have like really kind of slowed things down and shifted into a slower tempo for just, you know, a minute or two, and maybe just simplified it even more. The Seed that dreamed of its own creation is probably the slowest tempo on the album, but I felt like the album could have been doing with a few more kind of tempo shifts kind of throughout. Vocally, as you said, like, Nina has an incredible voice. Like, talk about like soaring. It is just very
range
powerful.
And breath as well, and measure. Like, I can't all those things together do not always come easy to vocalist, but she can hang. She not only can hang a note, but she can hit about 20 notes in that one breath as well, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Her range is incredible. And her style also adds like a lot of that Middle Eastern character to this. Her choice of melody and the notes that she hits are very different to what you would hear from like kind of current metal bands. She also does a little bit of that kind of chant-like vocal as well, which switches up the tone and the rhythm of certain moments. My only small kind of gripe was I did feel like it had a little bit of a repetitive nature to it, especially in the last kind of 2 tracks of the album. It is all clean vocals. There's no real kind of variance in the kind of like the texture of the voice or the intensity. It doesn't really get heavier or grittier to an extent. So it did become a little bit kind of familiar by the end. I also found it a little bit difficult to, not on every track, but in certain tracks I found it difficult to distinguish the chorus. Like, because the vocals are pretty much like soaring the whole time. There were certain tracks where I was like, is this the chorus, or is this like an interlinking part, or is this a middle eight? Or I wasn't too sure.
Kind of like that's traditional prog. Like, traditional prog music doesn't always center around the confines of what we class as commercial music. You know, like a chorus isn't always necessarily catchy or defined, and you know, it might be a theme that actually changes. Like, there might be a chorus in a song, but that chorus isn't the same any 2 times it's played. You know, what's played underneath is different, or what's sung is different. So
and
I get that.
That's absolutely fine. Like, I totally get that with prog, but I felt like there was a dynamic kind of change maybe needed at times, just because it was so kind of at one level for so long. There's a lot of kind of vocal layering on it as well. It's kind of used on like 70-80% of each track, you know, where the vocals are kind of layered up, and it sounds huge and it penetrates the music. But then again, like I said, it kind of becomes harder to distinguish the elements of the track or the structure of the track. There's a lot I enjoyed. Like, I can hear the band have definitely improved in quite a few ways since that first release, but like yourself, I don't think it's quite all there yet. Even after listening to this 4 or 5 times, it's still not as memorable as it should be after listening to that many times. But you know, there's bits of it I feel it kind of blends together a little bit. I'd say I'd bring like a little bit of that doom back that they had in the past if it was me, just to kind of break it up a little bit more. And vocally, like, it's very well performed, very well delivered, like, incredible voice. But it maybe got a little bit repetitive in the kind of last part of the album for me. Scores. What are you scoring this album from Lowen?
I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. Like I say, I love when it gels and connects with me. I kind of almost get that goosebumpy sort of feeling where I'm like, this is fucking awesome. But there are moments where, and it's their songs, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to judge them on that, but they go in directions and territories where I couldn't travel with them. Kind of felt like almost I was being held at arm's length as a listener, and to be able to fully commit to it.
UK passport, Duncan.
Yeah, it's always going to be that UK passport.
Wanted to stay, didn't you? Can't go on the journey.
But I do like there are sections where I want to be more into them, but I'm just not for whatever reason, and it's hard to articulate what that is. So 3.5 out of 5 for me. Yeah,
I was coming in exactly the same. 3.5. As I said, there's bits of this that I really enjoy. They've got the grooves down like to a T on this. There's some really cool moments where you lock in. It's just like, yes, that's awesome. And I do like that progressive side that they've added into this album. It definitely shows a more intricate side to the band. I'm not sure if they've got the balance just quite right on this one just yet. So I'm going to go 3.5 as well. That's the new album from Lowen. Do Not Go to War with the Demons of Mazandaran, which is out on October 4th on Church Road Records. Links below to the band, to the pre-order. Check it out, have a listen, see what you think. I'm happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. Stick some comments in. That is a review. Thank you for checking out, much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye everyone.